I'm Erica. Standing in the middle of my family development and play center, I watch as Ryan and Melissa scurry out, their humiliation palpable. It's a sight I never thought I'd see, and yet, here it is, the culmination of a series of events that have changed my life forever. My journey began with a dream, a vision of a place where children could learn, play, and grow in a safe and meaningful environment. I'd always been a planner, a thinker, someone who knew what she wanted and why she wanted it. Even as a child, I was the one who finished my homework early, lined my pencils neatly, and asked questions that made adults stop and think. By my late 20s, that discipline had solidified into a clear sense of purpose. I grew up in a family with a strong business background. My father, Henry, was a shrewd businessman who built his career on understanding people, identifying weaknesses, and assessing risks. He was strict but fair, always encouraging me to think critically and make informed decisions. When I approached him with my idea for the family development and play center, I knew he'd have questions. Sitting across from him in his well-appointed home office in Seattle, a thin folder lay between us on the polished table. He studied me intently, just as he did with any business proposal. "Are you sure this is what you want?" he asked, his voice calm but with a hint of concern. "You could open a simpler business, like a coffee shop or a boutique. They're more common and less risky." I'd anticipated his question and had rehearsed my answer. "That's precisely the problem," I said evenly. "Coffee shops and boutiques are everywhere. But there's nowhere for parents to take their kids where they can be safe and engaged while the parents get a break. A place where children can learn important skills and have fun at the same time." I opened the folder and slid it towards him. As he glanced down, his attention was caught by the market analysis, safety compliance plans, staffing projections, program schedules, and detailed financial forecasts. I explained how the center would operate, how we'd manage risks, and how we'd ensure steady growth. "You've really thought this through," he said, leaning back with a look of pride on his face. "More than most people much older than you." I nodded. "I've been thinking about this since college. I studied finance, not just to read balance sheets, but to understand how decisions impact others, especially children." He agreed to help me get started, offering connections, initial capital, and advice when I needed it. But he made it clear that the work would be mine, every success and every failure. That was exactly what I wanted. Building the center was no easy task. I spent months searching for the perfect location, rejecting several spaces until I found one that met my standards for safety, accessibility, and a warm, inviting atmosphere. Cost was a factor, but it wasn't the deciding one. Once the lease was signed, the real work began. I spent my days meeting with contractors, reviewing permits, and ensuring that every renovation met local regulations. I personally selected all the equipment, researching materials, weight limits, and age-appropriate designs. Hiring staff was even more challenging. I interviewed dozens of candidates, looking for patience, attentiveness, and emotional stability. Training took weeks, and safety protocols were drilled until they became second nature. When the center finally opened, the response was overwhelming. Parents were thrilled to have a place for their children, and the schedules filled up quickly. I expanded the programs, added weekend activities, and even opened a small cafe corner. The center was thriving, but it came at a cost. I was working long hours, often arriving before the doors opened, and leaving long after the last child had gone home. If a staff member was sick, I covered their shift. If a parent had concerns, I listened. If something broke, I fixed it. I was running on fumes, but I thought it was just a temporary phase. My father noticed my exhaustion before I did. One evening, he stopped by unannounced. He watched me move around the center, efficient but clearly worn out. "This isn't sustainable," he said gently. I tried to brush it off. "I'm fine," I replied, but even I didn't believe it. He cut me off. "You're burning yourself out. You need to take a real vacation." For the first time in a long time, I didn't resist. I knew he was right. I went to Miami for my vacation. The air was warm and salty, and the mornings were free of alarms. I spent my first day on the beach, just sitting under an umbrella and letting the sun warm my skin. It was strange not to have a to-do list, but slowly I started to relax. On the second afternoon, as I was lying on a lounge chair, a voice interrupted my thoughts. Ever tried surfing? I looked up to see a tanned, relaxed man standing beside me. He introduced himself as Jake. He worked as a fitness and surf instructor at the resort. I laughed. I can barely stand upright right now. He smiled. That's what everyone says. He invited me to take a surfing lesson, and out of curiosity, I agreed. Jake was patient and encouraging. He guided me through the basics, and even though I fell several times, he always helped me back up. By the end of the session, I was exhausted but exhilarated. Over the next few days, we spent a lot of time together. We talked about travel, work, and just about anything. Jake listened to me in a way that no one had in a long time. I found myself opening up about how much responsibility had been weighing me down. Our connection grew quickly. I knew it was a vacation romance, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt free, unburdened. At the end of the week, the thought of leaving was painful. I returned to Seattle with Jake. We got married quickly, much to the surprise of our friends. But for me, it felt like the right decision. At first, things were great. Jake found a job as a fitness trainer at a local gym, and I returned to the center with renewed energy. We settled into a comfortable routine, sharing dinners and spending peaceful evenings together. But as time went on, I noticed a change. I was growing in my role at the center, taking on more strategic responsibilities and expanding the programs. Jake, on the other hand, seemed content to stay in his comfort zone. He didn't show much interest in my long-term plans, and our conversation started to feel shallow. Around this time, Lily, an old college friend, started visiting more often. She'd comment on my schedule, Jake's work, and the success of a center. Her remarks were often laced with a hint of envy. I didn't think much of it at first, but I later realized that she had her eye on Jake. One day, I started noticing little things. Jake would come home late, saying he had private clients or last-minute sessions. His phone would be face down more often, and he'd step outside to take calls. One evening, when I reached into his jacket pocket, I felt something small and unfamiliar. It was a lipstick and 2 movie tickets. I was in shock. I tried to come up with innocent explanations, but nothing made sense. A few days later, I received an email with a video attachment. In the video, Jake was in a hotel room with Lily, their intimacy undeniable. I was devastated, but I didn't react immediately. I sat there, watching the video until the end, feeling a heavy weight in my chest. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the realization that our relationship had been falling apart for a while. That's when I met Ben. He'd been coming to the center with his young son for months. He was a quiet, observant man. One morning, when I was standing behind the cafe counter, lost in thought, he asked if I was okay. I don't know what came over me, but I blurted out, "My husband is cheating on me." He nodded slowly, as if he'd suspected it. He told me about his own experience of being betrayed by his wife. He used to be a criminal investigator, but now ran a private investigation firm. He offered to help me find out the truth, not to punish Jake, but to gain clarity. I agreed. We came up with a plan to test Jake's loyalty. I told Jake that I'd inherited a property from an uncle on my mother's side, but it came with a huge amount of debt, unpaid taxes, and loans that far exceeded the value of the property. Jake's reaction was immediate. He started asking questions, his tone sharp and calculating. That night, I heard him whispering on the phone in the hallway. He sounded panicked, saying things like, "It's bad. I don't know what to do." The next morning, he approached me with a solution. He suggested that we transfer all my assets to his name to protect me from the creditors. It was a temporary measure, he said. I played along, signing the paperwork without a fight. When he presented me with divorce papers, I wasn't surprised. I signed those too. The next day, Jake showed up at the center with Lily, announcing that he was the new owner and that he was going to sell it. I walked in calmly, took the folder of paperwork from him, and showed him that he'd signed a waiver of all marital claims to my assets. The look on his face was priceless. Lily was furious, and the staff was in shock. I told them both to leave, and they did, humiliated. Jake's reputation quickly crumbled. His clients stopped booking sessions, and he lost his job at the gym. I didn't take pleasure in his downfall. I just wanted to move on. Ben became a big part of my life. We spent more time together, and his son and I grew close. The center continued to thrive, and I learned to trust my team more. 2 years have passed since then. One day, while shopping, I saw Jake and Lily arguing. They looked tired and worn out. Jake looked up and saw me. I just nodded at him and walked away. As I pushed my shopping cart towards my car, my phone vibrated with a message from Ben. He asked if I needed anything. I replied that I was fine and that I'd be home soon. In the end, what remained was not anger or triumph, but clarity. I learned that true security comes from setting clear boundaries and staying true to myself.